Welcome back, everybody. It is an all-new season of KFR Sportscast, and you're with me, Big Sexy, and it's going to be this week's Sexy Picks. Let's get right into it. All right. So the first game of the NFL season for 2025 is going to be none other than the Dallas Cowboys going into Philadelphia and playing the Philadelphia Eagles. So, huge blockbuster trade that just recently happened is Micah Parsons is no longer a Dallas Cowboy. He is now a Green Bay Packer. So we're going to see a Dallas team without Micah Parsons, and we're going to see how they fare against the defending Super Bowl champions. They did get Kenny Clark from the Green Bay Packers. That might be helping them to stop the run a little bit more. They're going to certainly need all the help they can get against the Eagles, who were one of the best running offenses in football last year. A big help of that thanks to Saquon Barkley. So I'm going to pick the Eagles in this one. I just think that it's going to be, especially without Micah Parsons, they're going to need a lot of help out there. So, and Eagles, I think they're going to have another stellar season with Hurts, Barkley, Brown, and a gang. So give me the Philadelphia Eagles here. All right, next game we got is the Friday game live on YouTube. We got the Kansas City Chiefs going into Los Angeles playing the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chiefs coming off of a Super Bowl loss. The Chargers coming off of a pretty good season. It's going to be a very, very big test for the Chargers to see if they can build off the success that they had the previous season. I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. They always seem to have the Chargers numbers, so give me the Chiefs here. Right. Next game we got is the Las Vegas Raiders going into New England and playing the New England Patriots. The Patriots probably had one of the best drafts this past offseason. They got a lot of solid players. They also added Stephon Diggs to that receiving core. Second year for Drake May coming into the season. Then, on the Raiders side, they got a whole brand new look. New head coach. They got Pete Carroll as their head coach. Geno Smith is their quarterback. They added Ashton Genty from the draft. So the Raiders on paper look like a pretty solid football team, so be a really good game. I am gonna give the slight edge to New England here. I think that their defense and their new look offense is gonna be a pretty good showing out there. So give me New England, not by a lot. This one's gonna be a close game. All right, next we got, if this matchup isn't a perfect one for the start of the season, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers going into New York and playing the New York Jets. So, Aaron Rodgers going right up against his former team here. 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers on a new team again. He's got DK Metcalf to throw the ball to, so it's gonna be interesting. And then on the other side of that, you got Justin Fields playing for a new team also, and I guess the Jets are looking to get a little bit of revenge on old Aaron Rodgers there. So, give me the Jets here. I'm going to take the Jets by 3. All right, next game we got the Miami Dolphins going into Indianapolis and playing Indianapolis Colts. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, Daniel Jones is a starting quarterback in the NFL. Can't believe it. And all the Giants fans to Colts fans everywhere are like, welcome to hell. So this is he had a quarterback battle with one Anthony Richardson. He beat him in a fair competition. So, that says a lot about Anthony Richardson and says a lot about, that they wasted that draft pick. I mean, does this mean that Anthony Richardson won't play a single snap this NFL season? Probably not. Might still get an opportunity to start some games, depending on the health of Daniel Jones. We all know that Daniel Jones has a history of not staying on the field very long. Anthony Richardson might still very well get an opportunity to play NFL snaps here. The Dolphins had a pretty down year last year. Darren Waller coming out of retiring from his rap career, coming out of retirement, from football to play for the Miami Dolphins. So we'll see what he adds to that team. if anything at all. I do think the Dolphins are a slightly better football team, even with that being said. So I'll take the Dolphins in this matchup. Right. Next matchup we got the Arizona Cardinals going into New Orleans playing the New Orleans Saints. So Spencer Rattler has been named the starter for the New Orleans, so I guess we'll see how that turns out. I don't have any really high hopes for the Saints at all this year. I think they're probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league. And then you got the Arizona Cardinals, who are looking to get into a win now mode. You know, they got Kyler Murray, who's entering his prime. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. coming into a sophomore year. We'll see if he takes another step forward. We saw some flashes, of brilliance throughout the season, but his numbers overall were kind of underwhelming for a receiver that got drafted that high. But, nonetheless, I mean, he still, showed some really brilliant flashes of football. So we'll see if he could take a step. But I do think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to win this football game. So give me the Arizona Cardinals by like 10. All right, next up, we got the New York Giants going into Washington and playing the Commanders. So this offseason for the New York Giants, I think that, it was definitely one of the better off seasons that we've had in a long time. We signed Javon Holland. We ended up taking Abdul Carter in the draft. We got Jackson Dart. We also got Cam Scatteraboo from Arizona State. Like the Patriots did, had probably better drafts this past offseason. We also added, we all got a completely new look quarterback room, with Jackson Dart, with Russell Wilson, with Jameis Winston, and then on the defensive side of the ball, we improved our pass rush, added Javon Holland, like I stated, and Paulson Adebo. So the Giants, there's some talks that, a lot of experts are saying that don't be surprised the Giants are one of the NFL's leader in sacks this year, because we got Dexter Lawrence, we got Brian Burns, we got Kayvon Thibodeau, we got Abdul Carter. That's a very scary look for defenses to handle. Though I will say that it's probably going to take some time for everything to gel. I'm not expecting a super big improvement. I'm just hoping to see some improvement and to see us be competitive. Though I will say we'll be competitive in this game, I am still going to take the Commanders by a slight margin. The Commanders were one game away from the Super Bowl last year. They just re-signed Terry McLaurin to a massive deal. So all's right in the world over on the Commander side of things. So give me the Washington Commanders, I'll say, by like a touchdown. All right, so next up, we got the Carolina Panthers going into Jacksonville and playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, I really don't have too much of an opinion on this game or either of these teams. You got Bryce Young going into his third season here, and we'll see, because there were some games last year where he looked pretty good, showed some slight improvements. So we'll see if he can build on that. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars are hoping to bounce back from an abysmal year last year on their side of the ball. So, I think that the Jaguars bounce back a little bit here and they win this football game. Give me the Jaguars by 3. All right, next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals going into Cleveland and playing the Cleveland Browns. Man, yeah, talk about a wild offseason for both of those teams. The Bengals re-signing Jamar Chase, re-signed Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins, and everybody else. No soup for you. And then, the Browns, they had a very questionable draft. They drafted 2 quarterbacks late in, they drafted Dylan Gabriel, and then they were the one that ended up taking Shedeur Sanders to that massive draft fall he had. There was a lot of experts saying he was an early to late first rounder, and then he fell all the way to the freaking 5th round. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Even me, and I'm not really the biggest Shedeur supporter in the world, but I still didn't see him falling as far as he did. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. We got Joe Flacco starting for the Browns again, so We'll see how that pans out. Last time it panned out for them very well. They ended up making the playoffs to get smoked by the Texans, but they still made the playoffs. I don't see them winning this football game, though. I think I'm going to take the Bengals. All right, and then last game of the 1 o'clock window we got here, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into Atlanta and playing the Atlanta Falcons. Very, very highly competitive divisional game that we got here. Both of these games were extremely competitive last year. I don't expect to see anything different this year, but I'm going to take the Bucs in this one. Give me the Bucs by 7. All right, now we are going into the late afternoon window. We got the Tennessee Titans going into Denver playing the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos had quite a fantastic season last year for Bo Nix's first season as a full-time starter. You know, he definitely surprised a lot of people. They threw him right into the fire, and he responded very well. Bo Nix is, one of my favorites as far as, fantasy football quarterbacks this year. I think he's going to continue to build on that season that he had last year. And that defense, the talk of the town, and when it comes to the Denver Broncos, their defense performed stellar last year, and I feel like that's going to continue. And on the other side of it, you got Cam Ward, first overall pick, going to be starting for the Tennessee Titans. He was definitely the first overall pick for a lot of the experts going into the draft, and they followed suit and picked him up first overall. So we'll see how he pans out. I think, Cam Ward is eventually going to be a good quarterback. I liked Cam Ward coming out of college, but I do feel as though he's going to struggle a bit against this Denver Broncos defense. So give me the Broncos by like 14. All right, we got a divisional matchup. We got the San Francisco 49ers going into Seattle and playing the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Seattle Seahawks, talk about a new look. They got a completely new look on offense. Yeah, they got rid of DK. They got rid of DK Metcalf. They got rid of Tyler Lockett. Now they got Sam Darnold playing quarterback. They got Cooper Kupp playing wide receiver now. This is a completely new look Seattle Seahawks football team. And on San Fran, they're looking to bounce back from a under average year. From a couple years previous, making the Super Bowl to not even making the playoffs. That was largely due to Christian McCaffrey's dealing of injuries that he had all season long. And, they were injury riddled all the way around on offense last year. So I do expect them to improve on that and going back to being a powerhouse in the NFC. But so give me the Niners here. I'm gonna take this slight margin though. Give me the Niners by 3. All right. So now the Detroit Lions going into Green Bay and playing the Green Bay Packers. Like I mentioned previously, the Packers got a flashy new pass rusher to pair with Rashawn Gary by the name of Micah Parsons. One could argue that he is the best pass rusher in the league. It's very hard to not prove that argument to be correct because of his resume. But nonetheless, he's an elite pass rusher to say the least. So the Packers got a nice addition to that already stout defense that they have. Packers defense was one of the league's best last year, so I can expect them to continue that. The Packers did the unthinkable in the draft and finally drafted a receiver in the first round. I know some Packers fans that were thrilled about that. Then the Detroit Lions, who had a stellar regular season, but a lot of them had them. A lot of people had them, representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. And, to kind of get ousted and be one and done in the playoffs kind of shocked a lot of people, me included. I was, I thought that they were going to, run the NFC last season. In the regular season, they did. They were one of the best teams in the league. But then they kind of, fell flat against the Commanders in the playoffs. They're looking to, still be a contending team in this league. And I'm going to reluctantly take the Lions here just by a slight margin. Give me the Lions by like 3. All right, then we got the Houston Texans going into Los Angeles and playing the Los Angeles Rams. I think that, this is going to be a very competitive game. The Texans definitely have a lot of positive things going for them on the defensive side of the ball. CJ Stroud looking to have a little bit of a bounce back here. He had a little bit of a sophomore slump, and he is, in the previous year, it was hung up in our rafters of rookie performances in our KFR Sportscast rafters. Yeah, but anyway, I think the Rams are going to win this game. I really think that the Rams are favored, in my opinion, to win the NFC West because they had a Devontae Adams, and they got a lot of players that are coming back. That kid Jared Verse, their pass rusher over there, surprised a lot of people, made them one of the best pass rushing defenses in the league last year. I think he's going to continue on that, this year. I think the Rams are in a very, very good spot. So give me the Rams in this game by 7. All right, so the Sunday night game, first Sunday night game of the year, we got the rematch in the playoffs of the Buffalo Bills hosting the Baltimore Ravens. So we got Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, first Sunday night game of the year. The NFL did right by scheduling this one to be the first Sunday night game of the year. I think that this is going to be a very good game, as it was previously. I think the Bills are going to win this game. Definitely, watch out for the Ravens again this year. They got all those key pieces coming back. Bills, they're going to continue off of Josh Allen's MVP season last year. Josh Allen definitely hungry to have more success in the playoffs. As long as he doesn't run into Patrick Mahomes, he should be all right. Give me the Buffalo Bills by 3. And then the Monday night game to cap off week 1 of the new season is going to be the Minnesota Vikings going into Chicago and playing the Chicago Bears. Yeah, so J.J. McCarthy looking to finally make his NFL debut, going up against the Bears in Chicago. Couldn't ask for a better game to make an appearance. So I think, give me the Bears. Give me the Bears in this one. Give me the Bears by 3. Just because they're at home. That about does it for me, you guys. I think that we got a very interesting NFL season coming up here. Thanks for tuning in this time. A lot of interesting things are going to happen this season, so stay tuned because we're going to be here for it all. Also, look out for some future content about the New York Giants specifically from me. I always do a little bit about the New York Giants on here, so. We appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully, if you agree with some of my picks or disagree with some of my picks, leave a little comment down below. Don't forget to follow us on all social medias. This has been a fun time with me, Big Sexy, with Sexy Picks. So thank you for tuning in. Big Sexy out.